nice group here this morning. Okay, let's go ahead and begin, and I'll mind the door as I welcome you all. Thank you all for coming, and it's so nice to see the reactions we get, the interest in various topics and different guests that we have. So it's validating to see you all here. My name is Geoff O'Keefe. I'm the Executive Director of Zen Peacemakers, as many of you know, and some may not. Hopefully you're all members of Zen Peacemakers. It's free. It takes about 30 seconds to become a member. You just go to the website and click, and then we send you instructions on the secret handshake right after that. So, but even if you don't do that, be sure to sign up for the newsletter. I imagine you probably have already, because that's why you're here. But the newsletter comes out once a week on Tuesday, and it lets you know what we're doing. So, and we don't sell your list to anybody like that, and we try to keep the email on that list fairly light. So do join us that way if you would. I'm really delighted today to have our friends Sensei Fusho Rice and Yugetsu Carlomusto and Sarah Joren Drury and Sal Kenzen Randolph from the Village Zendo in New York City. And they have just launched this project, Women in Zen Buddhism. And I'm particularly warm to this topic. Some of you probably know, you may have attended. We did a year-long program on women in Buddhism last year, I believe it was, and we did 12 sessions. And so this is just a beautiful segue from that. And so I really look forward to them, what they have to present to us today. So you didn't come to listen to me. I will turn it over to Fusho, and once again, thank you all. So much appreciated that you're here.
Well, thank you very much. We're delighted to be here. We were just, and hi everybody, we haven't met, my name's Fusho. We were just talking about how many intersecting, kind of overlapping connections the Village Zendo has with the Zen Peacemakers. It kind of goes on, and it goes all the way back to our teacher Ankyō O'Hara, who was one of the co-founders of the Zen Peacemakers. So very much in parallel and connected storylines here. But I just wanted to share a little bit about the project and Ankyō for those of us that might not, for those of you that might not know. I think a lot of people are familiar, but we can tell you about the project and also about Ankyō. And as was explained in the invite, I think for this, we came together, Yugetsu, Kenzen, Joren, and then O'Hara is our only missing member, who is also a longtime member of the Zen Peacemakers. Couldn't be here, she's traveling. But we all had practiced and met years ago at Village Zendo and came together to just create this project. It's a pilot project, and it's a website dedicated to Zen women pioneers. And when we first heard about the opportunity, there was a grant that we received for a general topic of women in Buddhism. We kind of all immediately said we wanted to quickly focus on this generation, quickly because the generation is getting older, generation of women Roshis in sort of American Zen, who our teacher Ankyō Roshi was one of the kind of what we saw as a first generation for women to be teaching Zen in America. And we wanted to study and document lives of these pioneers. And so we wanted to archive the talks and the books and, conversations. And A few of us in this group happened to be filmmakers, and so we also decided to do an interview with Ankyō Roshi to ask her about what that was like, and starting out, and what the challenges might have been, or obstacles as far as inheriting this tradition, which is so traditionally male dominated or oriented, I would say, especially in the leadership of the teachers. And so we thought we would throw together some archives and just a collection of her work, as a record. And then the intention, as was mentioned, is really to build it out going forward. We hope to expand to the other women pioneers in Zen that we can find and profile, while we can. And so just a little bit about Roshi, Ankyō O'Hara. She's the co-founder and abbot emerita now. She stepped back recently at Village Zendo, and we're located in Manhattan. And it's the white plum lineage in the Soto Zen tradition. And we also incorporate elements of the Rinzai teaching. And she founded Village Zendo in 1986 as an informal sitting group with her partner, Barbara Joshin O'Hara, who's also Roshi, and co-founder of the Village Zendo. And we're now located in Tribeca, in the historic American Thread building. And she studied Zen initially with John Daido Lori, and then began to work directly with his teacher, Taizen Maizumi Roshi, who had come from Japan. And so this is the idea of first generation women, is what we mean by these women who initially had Japanese teachers who came over. And then she continued her practice with Bernie Glassman very closely, who empowered her as a teacher in 2004. And then early years, she was working with this group in her living room, and she led a meditation group for HIV positive people at the Gay Men's Health Crisis, and then got involved, as we said, with the Zen Peacemaker Order. And so the Village Zendo, based on this kind of beginning, is still very much committed to social justice and activism. And I wanted to introduce my cohort, my collaborators, and see if they wanted to share a few words about the project, and then we'll share the video that we did, and we can kind of go from there. Yugetsu, would you like to say anything about the project?
Well, I appreciate the invitation to be here and to tell you a little bit more, to share a little bit more about the project. I am a documentary filmmaker, and so, and Roshi was my graduate school teacher in the 90s. So this was and she's just retiring, she's just retired from the Zendo. So this almost, as we sat down to do the interview with her, it almost had too much weight, to do this. And I don't know that it was that she liked being pinned down in an interview about her life, we're all changing our minds. So there was quite a lot of footage. We came out with a 40-minute interview, and it was lovely the way it confounded our beginning expectations of what she might say, like who most influenced her, or, what she felt ultimately was most important. And I'll let the video explain the rest of that. But, even on video, she was still teaching us. So, and I just love collaborating with this group. We each brought our talents, our energies, and I think ultimately even though we're pretty busy, I think we're still going to continue the project, which I think is pretty good.
Thank you. Kenzen, would you like to share and introduce yourself?
Go. Yes, my name's Kenzen, and I'm a senior student at the Village Zendo and a very new priest. I think I wanted to talk about a couple of precursors to this project that brought us all together. So most of us who were involved in this were also involved a few years earlier in researching and revising the women's lineage that we chant. So it's traditional to chant the male patriarchs. And there are many Sanghas who have also women's lineage. We inherited that from another Sangha, but we spent about a year, I think, working on reading, researching, and refining that, adding some people to the list, removing some people from the list, and just generally trying to understand who all those women were. So I was a part of that project and was super excited by it. And discovered that there's one person who's on both lists, who is Prajnatara, who is thought to have been female, or some researchers believe was female, and was Bodhidharma's teacher. And then the other thing that brought us together was we had a Sangha member named Elena Yuka Taurka, who was an amazing performer and artist. And she had gathered all of us just before COVID. We had one meeting in person before we all went online. And we began to meet as creative women who were involved in media and performing arts. So that's what this group has in its sort of longer history. We've met every week or two, or sometimes every month since then, to talk about our creative practice with each other, and then eventually to work on this project together. So there's a lot of love between us and a lot of experience between us.
Thank you. Yes. Joren, would you introduce yourself and add any thoughts?
Okay. Yeah. Well, so I'm Joren, and a lot of things have been said already that I feel very strongly about, or very happy to have been included in this conversation and this discussion in this group, both in its various orientations as a group of Sangha members who got together to discuss our art practice, and then taking on this project, which has just been, certainly a labor of love in so many ways. And I like Yugetsu. I also was had the honor of being a student of Roshi's in two different ways, both at the very close to the beginning of the group, and then also in her NYU, her role as a professor of digital interactive media. And so there's something particularly sweet in a way about being able to make a website and to make a piece of media, sort of honoring her and collecting and archiving her work as a Zen teacher. So I don't know, if I have too much more to say that hasn't been said already, but I did get to serve as the photo editor on the project and bring in the photos that were collected from Peter Cunningham's archive, and that was very rich experience. And also another Sangha member, Jesse Jiryu, forgetting momentarily his last name, and so just to have this thing come to completion is great, and I just really appreciate you all being here to share it with us, for us to share it with you.
Great. And I think Ara's tuning in remotely, but so hi, Ara, we're glad you're here as well. She's on the phone or traveling, I believe, but she's with us. So I put the link to the website in the chat, so please take a look. And then I'm going to share the video. I'll share my screen and share the video right now. And then we can maybe share a little thoughts about what we were surprised by the project and where we hope it goes after.
I guess there's a stubbornness to just keep trying and keep trying over and over again. And there were some times in my early Zen practice where things seemed confusing, and how could I change? What can I do? And just keep on, like we do in Zazen as we're sitting. You're breathing, you're in a wonderful space, and then suddenly a reminder, a horrible thought arises, or a distraction arises. And then what do? Well, you take another breath. You see what's new, what's here now. The Village Zendo is about opening our arms and serving people and having a practice place for people. It's so true that it is about collaboration. There are many people that practice to this day that come in and they sit here for a couple of weeks. They come in on Sundays or something, and then eventually they just take up something. They pick up a cushion and they help clean. They help be part of the organization. The name of the temple is Dotoku-ji, and the ji means temple. So Dotoku. Dotoku means true expression, essentially. And it is the name of a fascicle of Dogen's about how to express your life, a thought, an image in the most appropriate way, in an appropriate moment. It's hard to make a Zen center. It's a lot of work, and it takes money, and it takes, in order to buy a place or rent a place or and buy cushions and do all of that kind of thing. So I think that women teachers, we just roll up our sleeves and we do what needs to be done. Jochen and I met at Zen Mountain Monastery. We were practitioners together. She has been the person who is like behind the scenes throughout, total support. She's the treasurer. She manages all the books. She pays the bills. She's a psychotherapist, and she's very much interested in allowing people to express themselves through the Dharma and through their own experience. So she's a powerful figure in our community. When somebody asked me, well, what woman teacher had the most effect on you? I don't think back to classical Chinese times, or I don't think back to India. You know who I think of? Ruth Fuller Sasaki from 1930s. Then she went to Japan and studied Zen with Suzuki Roshi. Then she came back to New York and started a Zen center in New York City, the first Zen Institute of America. For inspiration, give me Ruth Fuller Sasaki. It's really important to feel that you're not just out there on your own, that there is a support. I have benefited from the other teachers some that have come before me, Zen teachers, but also across the Buddhist spectrum, that there is this push of Western women Buddhist teachers. And so I'm encouraged by whenever I hear of a woman teacher that has been empowered and who is teaching. What I think is really important is that everyone have an opportunity to practice and to teach, regardless of their gender or their sexuality or their race or their financial situation. In particular, our conversation has been about gender, but it's not just about gender. It's about every living being has something to offer others, and they should be allowed to do that.
Okay, I'm glad that worked. So that's our video. And then we started a collection of her talks and interviews. She did a lot of interviews, gave a lot of talks. She had 3 books she wrote that were referenced. And so we're hoping to continue archiving her work. But I think an interesting question or kind of conversation that Kenzen offered up when we were talking about this today is maybe we could share what we learned by doing the project and sort of what we might have been surprised by. Did you want to start with something, Kenzen, you could offer?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I realized quite late in the process, really, after we had pulled together the film and even finished the website, was that we were engaged in something that is extremely traditional for Zen students to do, which is to take care of the teachings of their teachers and to pass them forward. So this is why we have Dogen's teachings. This is why we have really all of the vast, or almost all of the vast Chinese literature. It's not that the teachers were all out there self-promoting. It's actually that their students received their teachings and compiled them, made them into books. I'm thinking also of Trudy Dixon, who worked on Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and we really only have that book because of her. So, and in our Sangha, Howard Thorson, who's a longtime Sangha member almost from the very beginning, and Sybil Mioshin Taylor have worked on Roshi Enkyō's books and helped bring them out. And now, now that Roshi's retired, it's up to us to be the custodian of all those talks and to be the archivists. And I also am wondering about other sanghas with their teachers and how they're responding to a generation of teachers who are retiring, or in some cases, we've lost them. So what do you do with those teachings? And I think that falls in the hand of every sangha. So I'm curious to know, as we go forward, in this conversation, what other people think about that.
Thank you. Yugetsu, is there anything that comes to mind that you were surprised by or really taking away from working on this project?
Well, the day we did the interview with Roshi, it wasn't necessarily one of her best days. It was a trying day in a way. And so at the end of, and to many of the questions, maybe she was, I think, not wanting to be nailed down into any one form. And I think that, just the instinct, her Zen instincts were coming true because, it allowed us that wonderful perspective at the end where, yes, our conversation today is about gender, but that's not the larger conversation, and that's not in the bigger picture only who we are. So, I was glad she was honorary because in that she was giving us a teaching. And the other thing I guess that just strikes me is that, our original call to come together, as was mentioned before, was done by Elena Yuka Taurke. And she was in the process of dying of a form of ALS. And so our meetings together were not just a chance to talk about our creativity, but it was also to recognize our own vulnerability and to document that amongst ourselves and to share that and to learn from it. So I think when we knew that Roshi was retiring, it was really a push. Let's get this done. No more talking. Let's do it. Let's put the paint, as my Italian father used to say. And that's what we did.
Thank you. Joren, how was it for you?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say that, there was throughout the process, there was a feeling of like, there's just a kind of infinite wellspring somehow that we have to kind of sort through and pull out what sometimes felt sort of like arbitrary constraints in some way, to kind of truly honoring or truly representing or truly sort of sustaining the experience of Roshi as a teacher, and that we had to make those decisions that might have been just about time and space, or they might have been design decisions or sort of formal decisions in some way. That it just feels like the difference between sort of representation and experience somehow, but that we arrived at something that was a framework, a structure that held, it really in some way holds the place, that it feels so important to me that it's there. We often discussed it as being kind of a template for a much bigger project, which who knows whether or not that will branch to other projects that we'll do. But it is kind of I feel it's like a very essential somehow template for perhaps other people, other groups that will follow, or we will, who knows. But I think it's just holding a really wonderful and crucial kind of value that I'm really appreciating and happy to see now that we've sort of muddled through the whole process. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We, I think, all had that intention of setting up some sort of template that might be useful, very much in the open sense of sharing and connecting the dots, and also supporting others to do something similar in the realm of sort of archive and documenting, and so carrying things forward in that sense, and just really having a record. And I guess my one, yes, in the same vein of what Yugetsu was saying, my takeaway of working this closely on the video with Ankyō was so interesting to me, because when you start to frame it as like, well, what was it like as a woman? How was that different for you? Weren't there challenges? Wasn't that unique because you were a woman? And she just resisted framing it that way because she didn't see it that way. Because, in and of itself, when you're doing something like starting a Zendo, I don't think you're thinking about how I am as a woman. You're just doing it, is what she was sort of trying to emphasize to us, was I just who I was, and I was inspired, and I saw this opportunity, and it looked like, a way to help people, really. And had nothing to do with the fact that she was a woman. That was just how, the cards fell. But I think that maybe that's always the case when we try to frame something as, oh, but you were this type or that type. In the moment, that's certainly not what it's about. As she was saying, everybody should have this opportunity. Everybody should be included. It doesn't matter, just not specifically about gender. It's about being open and focusing and responding on where that need is, right, to that need. But that was my takeaway, was like, we're the ones imposing it as like, oh, the women teacher, but they, it is different. It is unique. It is worth noting, but that's not the thing that she was focused on by any means. Either one of them, I would say. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to add about going forward, or if we want to take some questions.
It seems a good moment to take questions and broaden the conversation.
And I think we have a small enough group, we can see everybody. So if you want to use your human hand, you can do that. There's an electronic hand down under React. You can raise that too.
I noticed, Tova, that you made a comment in the chat. Maybe you would share some of your thoughts with us.
Yes, thank you. I'm a student and teacher at San Francisco Zen Center, and I'm feeling so excited by what you're doing. I knew Ankyō because we were on the board of the Buddhist Peace Fellowship at the same time in the 90s, and I visited the Village Zendo several times. The last time was after an SCBA conference, and Ankyō Roshi invited me to have breakfast with her. So, and I've found her a wonderful teacher. And I love her book on Most Intimate. And I've used that with a number of groups, including our Queer Dharma group at San Francisco Zen Center. So, but I was thinking about some of our teachers, our women teachers who are still living. Our first woman abbot, Blanche Hartman, died, but one of her students, Zenju Earthland Manuel, compiled a book of her teachings. And this idea that it's up to the students of the teachers to create something to really remember them by is very inspiring. My teacher is Agent Linda Kotz, and she's been my teacher for over 30 years. I feel very grateful. And she's written some essays. I think she's wanting to write a book about Kuan Yin. But, just get some of her students together to do some work to honor her and make sure her teachings are preserved. And we have many other wonderful women teachers, some of whom studied with Suzuki Roshi. So just planting a seed that I think could grow, and I feel very encouraged by what you're doing. It's so important.
I mean, one thing that comes to mind as you were speaking is, we're framing this as women teachers. We could reframe it as queer teachers, and we could begin to look at queer teachers. And these forms of representation for me coming into the Zendo were important, actually, to see myself reflected, or to see possibilities of who I could be as were reflected in the teachers. It isn't that I couldn't have maybe done fine in a different Sangha with a different kind of different demographic of teacher, but it was important to me as a doorway in. So, when we have these different kinds of representation across race, ethnicity, class, gender, sexuality, etc., we have an opportunity to open doors for more people to make their way to the Sangha, to the Dharma. So I think, that's worth a little shout out there. And I think this question of preserving the work of your teacher goes also across genders, obviously, as well. It's not only about preserving the work of women teachers, although I do think there's something kind of special that's happened in North America in this generation that's worth considering and learning about. I noticed that there are quite a lot of Roshi students or members of our greater Sangha here with us today. I wonder if any of you have a thought you'd like to share. Yeah, Lumi.
First, I'd like to offer 108 bows of gratitude for all of you, Fusho, Kenzen, Yugetsu, Joren, and everyone else who worked on this project. It's very exciting to me. I love Ankyō and Joshin so deeply, and I have a tenderness for the Village Zendo Sangha. And I've been privileged and honored to meet with many female Roshis in the White Plum lineage, all the way to Brazil. Manja Koan. And I think during COVID, I locked in like a puzzle piece with the Village Zendo because of their creativity, but also because I have had the privilege and honor to sit in Dokusan with Joshin, listen to Ankyō Roshi. I studied with her student, Shuzen Roshi, in Philadelphia. And first time I went up there, I drove Shuzen Roshi, up to Village Zendo to give a talk. And Ankyō and Joshin treated us to lunch. I picked up my first copies of Householder Koans and The Hidden Lamp at Village Zendo. And I feel like there's a place for me with the women, the strong women. This is the only lineage in the whole world that has so many sensitive, creative, strong, even edgy, I would say, even edgy women in these roles of being teacher, of being guide. And I'm very attracted to that, you know? I was born in this body, has yoni and women features. And a lot of my beloveds in my life, family and beyond family, are LGBTQ, what I call two-spirit. And I just have such a tenderness for the White Plum lineage and the women who are teaching in these lineages. Even here in Colorado, Shinko Roshi is here. And it's really a beautiful that you're doing this. And I can't wait to see who else gets to be on the forefront and how much friction you'll get from them when you try to interview them. I like that grit. I like the word grit. And I appreciate you all so much. Thank you, Sean and ZPI, for putting the platform here, because I was trying to find a way to be a part of this, and it became clear just a couple of days ago, so thank you.
Fusho, I think you can see Chogaku has her hand up.
Yes. And I also saw Seicho after that. I think was going to weigh in.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am really excited and touched by this discussion, as I was last week when we watched the videotape of Ankyō. I saw it online. Many people were in the Zendo. And I agree with everything that's said about the importance of bringing to the fore the role and the extraordinary contributions of the women teachers in our lineage. But there's a piece of it that came from my experience that I just want to share, and I hope we don't lose sight of. And that was, it was back last Friday and then again today, a tremendous emotional and spiritual experience to see Ankyō on tape. I'm already missing her greatly. She was my principal teacher. And it brought back so much, not just of her, but of my practice with her in the Sangha. And it reconnected me with why I am there in the first place. Thank you.
I think Seicho, what did you want to ask or comment?
First of all, a deep bow to my Dharma sisters for this beautiful expression. The teacher is in the student, and the student is in the teacher, the tangled vines. And you've offered a beautiful tangle. There's no fixed, this is how it is. It's just a beautiful mirror. And I think in that same vein that Ankyō Roshi was lifting up of, no, don't, I
I won't say. It's kind of how it landed with me. That this is what this film and I think this project is doing. It's very compelling to me that both there's this interplay of representation matters, and yet the reality is itself, the bright pearl or the wisdom mirror, right? That's just shining the light of compassion. So how do we actually express that so we're not bypassing on the one hand, and at the same time we're really being so inclusive? And I think that the way we do this is in dialogue. And so I just think that the film that you made, of course, first of all, is a beautiful, transmission of Ankyō Roshi's teachings, and also Joshin Roshi too. In that way, I love that silhouette of the two of them. It just, yeah. So that was one thing I wanted to say. The other is just because it's been my own journey, which continues to evolve, is how our Sanghas interplay. So for instance, Ankyō Roshi has and will always be my deep formation teacher. And also, along with continuing to practice with the Village Zendo, I practice in the branching streams Sangha. And what I notice in that is that a lot of, I think, the work ahead of us is how to be in dialogue. So I'm thinking of my teacher now, Norman Fisher, and a beautiful book that called What is Zen, right, which is probably familiar to many, which is a dialogue book with Su Moon, who's an incredible lay teacher, right? So there's also this dance of lay and priest teachers, and how are we honoring them, and how are we really revealing that dialogue too, particularly here, quote, in the West. And so I also love that this film doesn't preach anything, but shows that as just an organic partnership that emerged in the same way that, like that book of Norman and Sue in dialogue shows that. So again, along with this theme of, women in Zen or queer Zen, or, whatever we want to call it, that there's also just the root of throughout these lineages, how does dialogue really reveal what's important now? So thank you for getting all that going, and also thank you for bringing in Yuka. It's an incredible bodhisattva.
Thank you. I wanted to, I hope I'm not putting you in the hot seat, Joan, but I wanted to ask your take as somebody who coordinated, you were saying, a focus on women teachers over the last year, and sort of how this might connect or resonate. Any thoughts you might want to share?
Oh, well, it's most intimate, as has been said, and I really appreciate the work you're doing, and I'll echo what everyone else has said. The short film you made is just beautiful. It really touched me. I haven't spent that much time with Ankyō, but it really resonated. She's been a guest here a couple of times, so we've had a chance to chat. And then, but what I would like to share is just a little personal anecdote. I don't know if it's silly or not, but maybe 25 years ago, I was a student at Great Mountain Zen Center, and the White Plum meeting was hosted there. And as a Sangha member, Shishin Roshi asked me to to go to the airport and pick up some teachers coming from New York, and it was Ankyō and I think Janet Abels and Joan Hobrooks, and so I was very diligent, wanting to be just exactly on time, and so which meant I was there early, and I think I might even had a sign so they could find me and so forth, and I was quite nervous, and everything worked out. You know, we connected at DIA at the Denver airport, and I helped them with their bags, and we started heading out into the parking lot, and I had no idea in the world where my car was. and I'm sure I was visibly panicked. And Ankyō said something or looked at me or touched me on the arm or something, but it was electric, and it was, it's going to be okay. And I calmed right down and found my car. So anyway, as long as I have my mic open here, I got a text. Someone wants to ask a question anonymously here. How are the voices of teachers of color like Zenju? How are their voices being included or represented or reflected in your effort? I think it's a good question.
Yes, we're very open to that and aware of that completely. I think, I mean, we haven't really strategized our very specific next steps, but one of the next steps would certainly be, and we are already open to all suggestions, and for people that are, you know, that we might be highlighting or wanting to highlight. Certainly, as diverse of a collection as we can find is what we would be looking for, I would think. You know, we're looking for any suggestions at all like that to collaborate. Go ahead, Kenzen.
You know, I mean, I think I would just begin by noticing that Zen in North America is very dominantly white, and there's something curious about that we all, you know, that's a thing that we inherit with this form of the tradition. And each Sangha is addressing that in different ways. You know, our Sangha has a people of color sitting group that I think has become increasingly important in bringing in new people into Jukai and gradually into senior studenthood, and you know, Roshi does have some successors of color also, but I think you know, it's just it's a question we all have to keep aware of. You know, I was recently challenged by a student in a different class I was teaching about why Asian American Buddhists weren't better represented in that class, and you know, what the sort of painful history of these sort of two forms of Buddhism, one which might be called convert Buddhism, which is the form that I'm a part of, versus people who grew up in Buddhist households, households that have always been Buddhist, and what gets taken more seriously in our American cultural landscape. So I just think these are things we have to be really alive to, and keep that. It's my own feeling. Just keep that change moving forward, and nurturing those changes and those forms of awareness. Which you know, like all of the moments when you speak to this feel completely inadequate also. So I don't mean that I feel like we're doing an adequate job. I just mean that I'm aware of it.
Jacqueline had her hand up for a while.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for what you're doing. It's just beautiful and clear and intelligent way of going about bringing in those voices into the conversation. And I just wanted to bring some more voices into the conversation. Aiken Roshi's lineage has some wonderful female teachers, Roshi Joan Sutherland and many others, and they did some beautiful initial work in I think I can't remember the name of it, but there was a write-up of a magazine kind of a thing in Hawaii that they that were voices of women Zen teachers that really influenced me. And I came from originally the Theravadan lineage, and the lack of representation of women in that lineage has had very real difficult connotations that came up in terms of support for building new temples and things like this. It was very, very real. So I think it is important to bring the female lineage up the way that you're doing in very real. It has very real consequences, is what I want to say, in the long run. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. There's definitely, I mean, that was one thing I would say when we first started talking about it, it's hard to find this documentation of this sort of collect and point out and record. I would say it's not a lot out there. So that's also part of the encouraging everybody to do this as much as we can, I would say. There's a need for it, for sure. Any other questions, comments? Seicho?
Just a question. In that spirit of that same dialogue, if people were to show this film, if there were to be gatherings to start or continue timely conversations, what would you say is the theme?
I would throw that back to you, Seicho. What did you see as the theme? I think,
Well, if I could I weigh in real quick? In order to sort of focus it, because it's broad, if you just start talking about women in Buddhism, it's a broad topic, right? So I think the way that we focused it in this particular project is to look at pioneers. And so for us, the interesting thing that hadn't really been documented, and as far as as thoroughly as we would have hoped, I think, was the fact that they were some of the first. And so I guess that's what I would say to focus in this particular project. But of course, as a broader conversation starter for, say, just women in Zen, I think it could go lots of directions, right? And if groups wanted to have a broader conversation in that sense, and I would be all for that, for sure.
I think part of why I'm asking that question or posing it, maybe it's an open-ended inquiry, a Dharma inquiry, is that it really feels like a skillful means to open conversations. And I think a lot of the opportunity of this moment is just to be in conversation where we don't know, so that, like, wow, I don't know how to do that. You're right. That's really important. It's a connector, as opposed to, I don't know how to do that. And it's shut down. So thank you.
I mean, one thing that comes to my mind is having worked on trying to create a women's lineage for us to chant as part of our liturgy. The the documentation is so fragmentary, is so, one of the women whose names we chant is Rice Cake Woman, who appears in a koan, and there is no other name. And we wanted to include her teaching. So that's how she appears to us. And we also, when we chant the traditional patriarchal lineage, we also have an addendum to all women and queer honored ones whose names have been left unsaid, forgotten or left unsaid. So these, I think, the action of documenting and gathering information to make available for the future, I think, as Jacqueline says, has consequences, because it's, we worked with efforts that many other women had already gone to try to create these lists. So we built on those, and we built on, books that Buddhist scholars, as it happens, pretty much all women, created in their own particular, like, PhD and academic research on some of these particular time periods. And without this, yes, Bani Myotai Trace also, yes. So I just feel like there's a way in which we live in this very abundant information environment right now, where it seems like we could just know anything. But I don't have a list of all the female roshis in North America handy, and I wouldn't know where to find one. I would have to create it, much less all of the women who are teachers in other traditions, Theravadan traditions or Tibetan traditions, or Pure Land traditions, right? So I don't have those lists handy. I would have to do a lot of research to make them. So maybe this is just something that whoever feels called to do this might begin to work on, Yeah.
Loving these suggestions in the chat. They're fantastic. And I think that I believe there is a contact email as well on the website. So keep them coming if you want to send them or email them or stay connected too.
And do keep us apprised if you or your Sangha, or of someone who's undertaking a similar project, because these connections sometimes are very fragile. Things are happening or they have happened, in terms of talking about queer elders. I'm thinking of the wonderful book that came out of San Francisco on Isan Dorsey, one of our queer elders. So these things, they get forgotten over time, or they kind of drift up back on the bookshelf. So the conversation that's been mentioned, that Seicho was mentioning, I think is vital. And it's wonderful to be a part of this conversation. Thank you for organizing it.
Jacqueline?
I just want to also bring into the conversation Sakyadita. I don't know if you know about that. Women, Daughters of the Buddha. They meet once every other year in a Buddhist country. They met in Malaysia this last year, and they are a great repository of female teachers in all the traditions. So they are scholars and monastics from all the different traditions, and they come and they exchange papers. And this might be a good place to present this information.
Great.
Yeah.
Lumi.
Thank you. Might you consider documenting women who are not necessarily roshis or senseis, people like Yuka? Yuka and I had a really unique and beautiful conversation. I never met her in person, like an ongoing conversation, a connection. And I'm like, how come you're not a roshi? she goes, I don't think I'm gonna live long enough to even get to sensei. But she was so wise. And there are women like her that are just such a shining light in the Sanghas, and including you, Fusho. You know, watching you go through your journey. A lot of the teachers that give the Dharma talks are such strong women, and have also a gentleness and a compassion that is different. I think our minds work differently than men. And I really resonate with these women who aren't necessarily been elevated to the pyramid of Zen into a Roshi. So it might be really beautiful after you have covered all your Roshis, all your female two-spirit Roshis, to start covering the women who have really, because there's a lot of footage that we have of Yuka. I loved one of the last Dharma talks where she couldn't speak. And I know that Kenzen was a speaker, Yugetsu was a speaker. I think Joren even spoke for her, was her voice. And it made her like that total bodhisattva. All of you, the one body. And that was very meaningful to me. And I'm sure it was very meaningful to many of the women who were practicing in the Sangha.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the archive also of Yuka's video projects. Maybe this is a separate thing too. You know, like not everything has to be under the same umbrella. But Yuka was a very important teacher for me also, yeah, we haven't really started on what it might mean to try to preserve or present some of her work, but we've had some conversations about it.
Yes, a little more. The Zenju Earthland Manual has captured my attention because she works in a shamanic realm as well. And I've read her books on Zen and shamanism. And I think this is really, really interesting because I think possibly before it became so crystallized, Zen is a mixed medicine in itself. And it might be interesting to work with her and talk to her. I've done several of her classes online, and she is African American, and she is a woman, and she is two-spirit, and she is also a shaman. So it's pretty amazing to be woman and be able to encompass all of that. Yeah. And another suggestion, I don't know how many of you are connected with Kumu Jun, Roshi Jun Tanoe in Chicago, but she's also a pioneer. She has the mixed medicine of hula. I take her online chair hula classes, and really a beautiful heart. I did she was in my Bearing Witness circle at the Native American Bearing Witness retreat in 2015. And this is how I met some of these amazing women, was through Bearing Witness retreats. And I think she's a really strong pioneer in Zen and hula, and bringing the language of the earth to people on Turtle Island here.
Nice. Thank you.
Now I'll be quiet.
I know Ankyō has been on those Bearing Witnesses retreats as well.
Lumi, can you put their names in the chat space?
I did. Yeah, it's in there.
Okay. I'm not seeing it.
Kenzen noticed it, I think.
Okay, it's up in the chain.
Joren, are you on your way?
Right, I have to go. Yeah, but it's been really meaningful and wonderful to be here with everybody. Thank you so much.
Here.
Bye.
Likewise, I need to go as well. Thank you.
Well, Fusho, perhaps that's our signal.
I think that's our signal. Yeah. Been really great. We really appreciated being here with you all.
Thank you all for attending, and thank the four of you for leading. And thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe, take care of yourselves.
Take care.
Thank you so much for all of this.